I really enjoy running games at conventions. It's different. You're public, you've got a bunch of strangers. Usually there's time pressure because your time slot is limited. It stretches and builds different muscles than your weekly campaign. Importantly, it's a way to grow our hobby. You get to showcase your favorite game to new people. Today, we're going to talk about how to do it, how to run games at a convention. Specifically, I'll use ShadowDark as the example because that's what I've been doing this past year. I'll include tips before, like how to prepare for the convention, how to kick off the session, how to help your players become a team at right there at the table, and then how do you run the adventure? And of course, wrap it up. All right, that's today. Let's dive in. First, I'm John. Welcome to my channel. I'm a longtime referee. I love the TSR era of Dungeons and Dragons, like 1980s. So I'll talk about that a lot here on my channel, but I'm currently enjoying ShadowDark, modern mechanics with the 1980s style. So I cover that here a lot as well. Thanks for being here. Let's start with what kind of experiences I've had. I've run games at Gen Con for several years. I actually ran a couple years worth of Adventurers League. A buddy of mine was the local organizer. He needed referees. I volunteered. It was like week in, week out, every week. It's a public table, so you're always going to be with a group of strangers. I got a ton of experience doing that for 5e. And this past year, I ran games here in Philadelphia at Page, a local gaming convention. I'll be there again next January. And just like 2 weeks ago, I wrapped up some time at Pax Unplugged running ShadowDark. And why would you do this? Well, first off, it's fun. Like, obviously, I've always had fun running games at conventions. It's a chance to sharpen your GM skills. I enjoy being an ambassador for the game and trying to grow our hobby. I enjoy the teaching moments. And then frequently, organizers usually need help. That's why they're looking for game masters. Most conventions you could get in for free if you agree to run a certain number of games. So it helps you as well. Here's why ShadowDark is great for conventions. First, most people are familiar with 5e or Pathfinder, and this is a really easy step down. Actually, all OSR games are pretty easy to explain, but ShadowDark uses almost the same mechanics. I love how simple and easy ShadowDark is to run. That's why I'm running multiple campaigns. So it's really easy to run at a convention as well. Typically, you're going to do a simple dungeon, and the combats are really fast, which means the player turns are fast. Things move around the table very quickly. It's very easy to keep people engaged. You do have to pick an adventure, though. Typically, a game slot's going to be about 3 to 4 hours. Now, in any kind of old school game, you're going to be able to cover a lot more of the dungeon than if you're playing, kind of a battle chess game like Pathfinder or 5e that involves miniatures and really intense tactical combat. So you can typically clear 12 to 15 rooms, although maybe 7 or 8 is a better target. Just make sure that the adventure has very clear stakes, like the mission is easy to understand, the goal is clear, the players can get into it very quickly. Obviously, you need to be really intimately familiar with it, whether it's homebrew or it's published. At PAX, I was running this adventure, The Flooded Ruins, so I didn't write it. I was running it on behalf of a group. Obviously, I needed to spend some time reading it. We'll talk a lot more about Flooded Ruins, but here, like an example would be, so there's a ghost on the Wandering Encounter table, and we don't get any details about it. Well, I know I'm going to have to play this ghost anytime the encounter comes up. So part of my prep is coming up with a little backstory for the ghost. It wasn't just a ghost. It's Blackhort the pirate, and none of ye will get my treasure. That kind of a thing. And so now you're going into the session with a plan. I think it's good to think about how you might describe traps and puzzles and telegraph danger and have a plan for all that kind of stuff. I think homebrew's fine. I run homebrew most of the time when I'm running games at a convention. I'm using it as an opportunity to kind of play test stuff or learn what works. I will talk about Flooded Ruins, though, a little further on today, because I think you actually can learn a lot by running like someone else's adventure too, and trying to figure out what makes it work. Part of your prep needs to account for player characters, like pregens, pre-generated characters. In the ShadowDark world, there is a website, ShadowDarklings.net. Those guys, those people, they're doing God's work. ShadowDarklings.net is your best friend. You can quickly generate random characters from level 0 on up. There's a way to level characters up. You can quickly discard them if they're hopeless. I typically want to bring 2 per player to account for player character deaths. Just a few watchouts. One, if it's a higher level adventure, you may need to adjust the equipment. With ShadowDarklings.net, the equipment gets set when the character's level 1, and then when you level them up, maybe like Flooded Ruins was level 4, the characters still have the equipment they had at level 1. So that fighter who only had enough money for like leather armor and a club is not going to still have that when they're level 4. So you will have to go back through and adjust the equipment you see fit. For the fighter example, maybe by then they have plate mail shield and proper weapons. Likewise, you can specify whether they should have any magic items and assign every character like a random magic item. You also need to pack your bag. Convention players, they wander the convention without a care in the world. Luckily, they're usually dressed and they've got their badge. They will probably sit down at your table with nothing else. So make sure that you've got extra pencils, extra dice. Obviously, you need all your adventure stuff. I always want to make sure I'm bringing fluids like water. I can't get my hands on coffee. I'll have a Coke with me. A lot of times I'm running games like 8 to midnight or 7 to 11. So they're going to go later at night. That also means like some nourishment, protein bars, protein shakes, that kind of stuff. Now, before the players sit down at the table, let's have an aside about teamwork. Whether you've thought about it this way or not, Dungeons and Dragons and similar tabletop RPG games, it is a team sport, and the players all need to work well together as a team. If you're running a long home campaign, you already know this. Your group, like if you were to look at them, you already know like, okay, this is the person that always likes to do role playing and do funny voices with the non-player characters. This person takes really good notes. This is my instigator who pulls levers and pushes buttons. This guy's the tactician. That person at the end, they're really good at solving puzzles. And that's at the player level. And then at the character level, you've got the fighters who are the front line, and then the archers, the healers, the spellcasters, the skill specialists like the thieves. The characters all work together as a team too. And at a convention, you have a group of strangers who have never met each other. Now, back in the 1960s, there was this psychologist, Bruce Tuckman. He studied teams and teamwork and how teams develop. He came up with this thing, the Tuckman model, which says that anytime a group of people together are forming a team, they're going to go through these 4 phases before they become a high-performing team. And this happens every day. The Tuckman model, it's taught in leadership, management classes, all sorts of stuff like that. And your convention table will go through this same experience. They will quickly go through the stages, and you want them to be a high-performing team by the end of this game session, because that's going to raise the chances that they're successful, that there's not a TPK, and that they all have fun. So now let's talk about some techniques you can use at your convention table to help your players quickly go through the phases and become that high-performing team. For me, as the players approach, the first thing I want to do, people sit down. Most conventions are going to have these round tables, 7 chairs, 1 for the referee, 6 for the players. Get everyone to introduce themselves. I always write down the names, make sure that I can go around the table and be like, all right, that's Daniel, Philip, Adam, Bruce. Know who people are. Ask them what kind of experience they've had, whether it's with ShadowDark or with other games. Most people are going to have experience with 5e or Pathfinder, which is great. And this starts to break the ice. But to get people to work together as a team, even before the dungeon starts, I want them to make some group decisions. This starts the process of them exercising their agency. Decisions are problems. Coming to a decision as a group is a form of problem solving. It's a way to kind of flex your agency. It's a way for them to start exerting some identity. So I'll give you an example of what I did with the flooded ruins. So the adventure is there's this marshy island in the middle of the gigantic Black River. The Black River is this Amazon-like river, 12 miles across, that wends through this gigantic jungle, and there are marshy islands out in it. And there's this basalt temple that's sinking into one of the islands. The natives avoid it because it's got a terrible reputation, and your sponsors believe that there's some powerful relic there. Boom. That's the elevator pitch. That's the adventure. What I said to the players is, all right, you've arrived on this large sailing ship, which is anchored in the river, not far away. Your group has taken these like longboats with oars to this swampy island. You're standing in front of the basalt flooded ruin, ready to go in, and we need to decide who you are. You could either be ship, could be full of pirates, and you guys are all scurvy pirates who explore forgotten ruins to loot them of treasure, to find these ancient relics, and then take them back to the big city and sell them on the black market for lots of wealth and money. Or your ship has been sponsored by the College of Mages who study like ancient cultures. There are scholars back on the ship. You guys are like the Laura Croft and Indiana Jones adventurers, archaeologists who go into these ancient ruins first and make sure that there's no monsters and no traps. So the first thing before we pick characters, who are you guys? Pirates or archaeologists? And invariably, people in the group will start acting as facilitators and kind of like take charge and start figuring out what everyone wants to be. And good ones will get everyone's opinion and kind of do a nose count. And at a convention like PAX, like there'll be people who are like, oh, I spent the entire weekend playing Pirate Borg. I've had it up to here with pirates. I want to be an archaeologist, and other people are like, oh, of course we want to be pirates. Who would want to be an archaeologist? But one way or another, after some discussion, the group will come to a decision. Everyone's happy. Now the next thing is characters. And some referees will have the pre-made or the pre-generated character sheets right there on the table. Maybe they'll even have an image of the character. And so you could be like, oh, cute elf chick, that's who I want to be. Or gruff dwarf fighter, I'll pick that person. Again, I like to do things a little different. I will give handouts that list the character options that are available and ask the group to talk about it and come to consensus on what they want to do. Not because the other way isn't good, but because it's another opportunity for them to have a discussion and come to some decisions before even entering the dungeon. And so there'll be someone who's like, I played a cleric in my home game for the past 2 years. I would really not want to be the cleric this time, or the priest. Someone else will be, you know what, I'm totally new to this system. I think fighters are easy. Does anyone mind if I'm the fighter? And in this way, it might take a few minutes, but all like 6 players are going to find their niche or their niche somewhere and get a character. And right now, your group has already accomplished several things. It's like what the, what was that guy's, an admiral said, if you want to change the world, wake up every day and make your bed. Start making simple decisions, simple accomplishments, and kind of build on them because they provide a foundation. Your group's identified who they're going to be, and then they've picked their characters. I already know who the caller is because I've watched all of this, and then I look for a volunteer, for a mapper. And before they've even entered the dungeon, they've already started sort of gelling as a team and moved through those kind of phases to norming and performing. If you're not able to do like something corny, like pirates or archaeologists, one of the things I've done in the past, most dungeons, for instance, will have multiple entrances. Usually there's some kind of an investment where you have to scout or find the secret entrances or find the alternate entrance. But for a convention game, for a one shot, why not let them know? Well, there's the main entrance that everybody knows about, but you also know that there's another way into the dungeon too through an alternate entrance, and let it be a decision point or a discussion point for the characters and the first chance for them to really kind of work together and exercise their agency. So that's another thing I've done in the past along the same theme. Usually I will give people who are new to OSR gaming just a very high level primer. I want them to understand that in the OSR style, we're going to rely more on the descriptions of what they do and them interacting with the environment over ability checks. My own style, I'll let them know that I'm going to use descriptions to try to telegraph danger, to provide clues where there could be traps or secrets. I'm really opposed to gotchas. I think always players can look back and be like, oh man, we missed. Like that was clearly a clue and we walked into the trap. And then always remind people that this is an old school game. Characters are mortal and combat is deadly. That's why we're going to have this big stack of 6 replacements in case anybody dies. I want to provide a primer on ShadowDark to folks, but this is a lot of information. So I try to keep this on the table and bring it up when it's relevant. So for instance, ShadowDark doesn't use precise movement. It uses kind of these banded distances like close, near, double near, far. That's not really relevant until combat starts. So let's keep that off to the side. But right up front, I'll try to work in the bolded stuff, like how does magic work? The idea that if there's a dungeon, we're going to use a real-time torch timer. For a short convention game, I might do 30 minutes for the timer so that it has a real impact on the session. And then luck is a big one. What it is, like what you can do with those luck tokens and how to get them. And for a convention game where I'm very sensitive to the players working together effectively as a team, luck is really important because you can share it. It's a resource that encourages teamwork between the players. For me, I like to give it out to anyone who's funny, who makes the table laugh and keeps things light, or players can nominate other players to get a luck token if they do something extraordinary. So it's all meant to sort of reinforce some camaraderie and some fun at the table. Typically, to start, I will have all 6 players roll a d20. The top 3 rolls are starting with a luck token. And so kind of how we get our starting quota. And then as far as tips on actually running the game at the convention. So the first is think about public speaking. You learn to project so that whoever's the furthest person in whatever space you're at can hear you. At the table, that means that whoever's sitting really far directly across from the referee, if you're speaking loud enough for them to hear you clearly, then obviously the people on the sides are going to hear you as well. Typically, convention games are going to be in rooms where there's a lot of other people and it's very noisy. So you're going to have to project. I would strive to obviously smile, have fun, be light. If you're having fun, they're going to have fun. I've already mentioned, try to come up with a few memorable NPCs. It's Blackheart the pirate. It's okay to be silly at a game. These are public spaces though, so if your game dips into horror, you want to keep descriptions and things like that PG. You do want to pay attention if it appears like anyone is getting overlooked or their voice isn't heard. Your role as referee is to help make sure that everyone gets a little bit of spotlight time. Maybe that doesn't matter in your home games as much, but I think at a convention game, that's part of your role as an ambassador of the game. You may have to mediate some conflicts if there's some disagreements. And one of the things I always let people know right at the beginning of a game, okay, we're here for 4 hours, it's 8 to midnight. Sometime between like 9:30 and 10 p.m. at night, like somewhere halfway through your session, say, we will plan a break. You'll get 10 minutes. People can go to the bathroom, hit the vending machines, get some fresh air, whatever. Because 4 hours is a long time to sit in one place. People get creaky, their back hurts, their knees hurt. And if people do need to take a bio break or go to the bathroom and they know that a break's coming up, they're going to hang in there and then be like, made it to the break. Some quirks for me, I always, I've been in this phase since I've picked up ShadowDark of running almost exclusively theater of the mind, like no battle maps or battle chess. I don't use a Dungeon Master screen. That's been for a long time. So I always roll in the open. I do try to be fairly generous with luck tokens at a convention. It always gives people something to do and helps mitigate some of the randomness in an OSR style. And I think you can go easier on rulings. In a home game, I think there's a tendency to maybe be stingier because you don't want to create a precedent. Like, hey, can I run and jump 15 feet in my plate mail? You'd be like, could you? Could you? But in a convention game, maybe you're more willing to give that stuff easier odds or make it easier because, it's a one shot and you want to keep things kind of light. Now, I said I would talk a little bit about Flooded Ruins. Flooded Ruins is a published adventure that came in Cursed Scroll 4, the River of Night one. And this isn't officially published yet, but if you were a backer of the Western Reaches, it's out there. When I was at Pax Unplugged, I was working with a group called Lurking Fears. They needed help. This is the adventure that was signed up for the time slots that I was refereeing. And what was interesting about it is that there's only one monster in the adventure. There's a chance for some wandering monsters, but the only real monster in the whole adventure, besides some hazards, is this gigantic, monstrous snapping turtle. The characters are 4th level. The snapping turtle is 9th level. It does 3 attacks a round. It can do like 13 to 15 points of damage a round easily. So at 40 to 45 points of damage a round, it's basically going to kill any player character 1 per round if you try to stand toe-to-toe with it in melee. And so that ends up making for a very interesting adventure where if the characters realize how dangerous this is, it becomes a little cat and mouse as they're trying to avoid like this big kaiju-like snapping turtle that's stomping around inside the ruins. And all the groups I refereed for tackled the problem of the turtle like radically differently. And then there was this ghost, which I mentioned in the Wandering Monsters, which is like the only other like really serious threat in the adventure. I personally love ghosts. I think they're a lot of fun. It's a monster that you can have fun with the character, right? Give them motives and make them colorful, like Blackheart the pirate. But most importantly, tactically, like they can possess people and then like run off with the body, which is completely hilarious as the referee. Like typically have the ghost attack someone that's the most vulnerable to the ghost attack. And then once they possess the body, the other characters get to watch as the ghost runs that person off into the most hazardous thing the ghost can find. Like, oh, are you on a bridge? Guess what? We're jumping off the bridge together. Or are there strangle vines or these lotuses that float on the water and drown you? Or is that a pool full of crocodiles? Yeah, whatever's nearby that's a terrible result, the ghost is going to run the body that it took control of into the hazard. And then the other characters now have to deal with trying to rescue their friend. So Flooded Ruins was interesting. Like I said, it was minimalist. It's not something I would have either written or picked to run. But actually, even for me, helped me develop like some new referee techniques and kind of a newfound appreciation for what a real minimalist monster adventure, like how it could feel to run that. And it does help getting to do the same adventure multiple times and kind of like evolving your style along the way too. I mentioned lurking fears. You will find that some conventions, if you're going to volunteer for the convention, you just register your own events like homebrew, whatever it is, get given slots, show up, get your table and stuff, and you're 100% on your own. Other conventions are done through organized play groups. Baldman Games is a big one you'll see at some of the larger conventions. I think Lurking Fears has really started to pick up for games like ShadowDark, for instance. I think they've got an agreement with them at all the major conventions. So you may want to check those guys out. I had a good experience with them. People do not get into the game industry to make $1 billion, buy an island, and retire drinking Mai Tais. They do it because they love role-playing games. They love gaming. They like being around games. It seems like all the people that either own or run Lurking Fears, like I met the organizers, they're all just people who love games. They're fun to talk to. They ran a real professional event. I don't think they do a lot of East Coast games, so I don't know how much I'll see them. Maybe if they come back to PAX next year as well. But if you're in the Midwest, I think that they have a big presence at like Gen Con, Origins, things like that. And then like as you're wrapping up, obviously you want to thank everyone, confirm they had a good time, invite feedback. Feedback is a gift, especially if you get a chance to hear like what you did well, what you didn't, what they liked about the adventure, what the players didn't. I think for homebrew, that's really valuable. For Lurking Fears, it was interesting because they put a QR code on every table and players could scan it and then provide anonymous feedback and write about it too. So it was super interesting getting like written feedback on all my adventures. The feedback about me was all very positive about the adventure. Definitely some things that they didn't like about the adventure, and maybe even some things that with hindsight I could improve. So again, feedback is super valuable. And remember, what you get by doing this, you will sharpen your skills as a referee. You've got to be able to keep things moving, think on your feet, possibly deal with conflict. You're going to have to deal with different play styles. You will get confidence and grow as a referee by putting yourself out there and running some convention games. And in turn, that will make your home games even better. Hey, thanks for being here. If you've enjoyed this, please consider subscribing. I think I do a good job on my channel. So there's lots of content like this out here that you can check out. In fact, the wise YouTube algorithm suggests that one of these is the next video you should see. Anyway, see everyone next time. I think I'll be taking a look at Curse Scroll 6, City of Masks. It recently came out for the Western Reaches Kickstarter. It looks super interesting. We'll talk about that one next time. Thanks.